Hey Viva fam,
Hey.
welcome back. This is Richa again.
And this is Lucy.
Perfect. We're gonna continue our conversation from last week where we were talking about a lot of good health and fitness stuff.
Yeah, a lot of things.
Yeah. Do you want to start? You have a lot, apparently.
Yeah, so I've been reading this book that actually one of our viewers on the YouTube channel recommended. It's called Body by Science, and the book is actually primarily about this training methodology called super slow strength training. But it's also beyond that. He also talks a lot about the science behind how exercise affects us and how food affects us. I will say that there are a lot of questionable science in the book, and I felt like he cherry-picked maybe some of his research. I haven't delved deeply into that, but there was aspects of it also which it really resonated with me, and there were also things that kind of made sense for me that like put pieces together that I always kind of knew about, but didn't really wasn't really just able to see all the pieces relate. So one of it that came up was the idea of different exercises affecting calorie expenditure, which I know is a thing that shows up a lot with our clients, because a lot of people, when they first think of weight loss, they immediately think of exercising to burn it off rather than controlling their food intake. And what this guy points out is actually that, well, first of all, and I'm going to talk specifically about cardio right now, and then I'll talk about strength training later, but when you are on a cardio machine, a lot of people think weight loss is calories burned because when they go to the gym and run on the treadmill or they wear their Fitbit, it tells them, hey, you burned like 300 calories or whatever doing an hour of running. And but what they don't actually realize is that the amount of calories that your Fitbit tells you burned also includes your BMR, like the calories that you would have been burning had you just been sitting on your butt. That's why they ask you for your your height and your weight, so that they can calculate your BMR.
Yes.
The actual exercise burned is less than what your Fitbit says. Always, actually. And I've actually worked on trackers before.
Yes.
I worked actually on the Microsoft Band, and this is true. During the moment that you spent doing intensive exercising, let me see, for most people, from the data I saw, about 16 to 26% of your calories burnt during exercise, according to your tracking devices, is actually just from being alive. So, in other words, if your tracking device tells you that you burned 100 calories doing an exercise, you probably actually burned 75 calories instead from that actual exercise. But the other thing is that what fitness trackers don't necessarily account for is that the more time you spend doing an exercise, like the better you get at an exercise, and your body will adapt. If you're not challenging yourself, if you're running at the same speed, right, on a treadmill every single time, your body is going to adapt to that. So let's say running 10-minute miles, so 6 miles per hour for 5 miles every day, right? If you keep doing that, 2 weeks later, you are going to be burning less calories doing the same workout than you did 2 weeks prior, because your body is adapting to the workout. It's going to be expending less energy to do that same amount of workout. So over time, even though you're burning, your Fitbit might still keep telling you that you're burning 100 calories, but you're actually going to be burning less and less and less and less the more you do. And this is what happens when you don't have what we call progressive overload, which means make your exercises more and more challenging as you keep going. Otherwise, your body's going to adapt to the point where you spend very little energy doing a lot of work, which is great from a survival perspective. From an evolutionary perspective, that's great that your body's not expending a lot of energy. But if you want to lose weight, then that doesn't work in your favor.
And the reason it's adapting, the two factors, as you said, like one of them is progressive overload. So of course, when you're running, even if it's not strength training, your quads are getting more muscular. And of course, you don't have as many tears anymore because your body has gotten stronger.
That's right.
That's one.
Yes.
And the other one is, I'm guessing, the mechanics. You have nailed the efficiency of your mechanics, I'm guessing, at some point.
Yes, exactly. Basically, like, things are going too well.
Yeah.
Almost. I mean, and it's funny because it's like what your body wants. objectively speaking, it's really good to be efficient at burning energy.
Yes.
And
So if you don't have
exercise,
food, you can still survive.
Exactly, which is what we're made for.
Yes.
Okay, now I want to talk. This is going to go into a strength training now a little bit. Back to the BMR thing. First, I just want to point out that a pound of muscle is metabolically active tissue. It takes about 50 to 100 calories a day just to maintain 1 pound of muscle. Whereas for fat, I didn't write this down, but I believe it was a very, very small amount, like 5 calories or something, to maintain a pound of fat or something like that. It was very small. I didn't write the notes for this, but the gist is that instead of channeling your exercise energy into doing cardio for the purpose of burning off calories during that 1 hour or even 3 hour long exercise session, your time would be better spent invested in building your muscle so that you can actually burn more calories over the long run. If you have a lot of muscle, you will be burning more calories just by sitting on your butt because your body needs to maintain that muscle. Oh, here. If you were to lose, this is from the book. If you were to lose 5 pounds of muscle over time as you if you were to lose, assuming you're not keeping track of your muscle and you're losing weight and muscle at the same time, if you were to lose 5 pounds of muscle over time, that would result in a loss of 250 calories per day that your body would otherwise be burning to keep that muscle alive. So, counterpoint to that is if you build 5 pounds of muscle, then it would almost be translated into adding an extra 250 calorie burn. Yeah, and that goes in, so your muscle goes into your BMR, your basal metabolic rate, right? Recall that is the calories needed to maintain homeostasis, and that includes maintaining your muscle mass. Okay, I'm off my soapbox now.
Okay. Well, why don't you tell your story of what happened after you did the bigness project?
Oh! Yeah, so there's this lady called Jen Sinkler, amazing person. She co-created this program with dang, I forgot, but I'll include it. Yeah, I'll include it in the description. And anyway, they created this program called the Bigness Program, which is a very intensive hypertrophy program. It's 4 to 5 days long. You do, I don't know, it starts out as an hour worth of workout, and then it slowly expands into about 90 minutes worth of working out with, I forget how many exercises, like 3 to 5 sets of 7 to 10 exercises per workout session. So I was in the gym, and for like 90 minutes at the peak of this training program, 90 minutes at a time for 5 days at a time, 5 days a week, and like intense strength training. This was it. This wasn't steady state nothing. This was like you're lifting until you are sore and huffing. I realized that I needed to eat a lot more food in order to keep, because that was the point where I started to lose weight if I wasn't making sure that I was eating to balance out the amount of effort I was putting. I was putting a lot of, what's really happening is when you're strength training, you're putting a lot of stress and wear and tear on your muscles. So your body needs that extra calories to repair your muscles. It's not putting those extra, if you're apportioning it correctly, it's not going to put in those calories into fat storage if it has muscle to repair. Does that make sense? So my maintenance, I was actually tracking my calories during this point. It shot up from about 1,500 calories, which is my usual if I'm just maintaining and not working out too hard. It shot up to about 1,800. So I got about 300 extra calories. Now my calories have fallen back down to like maybe 16 to 17. It depends on the day because I've stopped doing that program.
Yeah.
But when I was doing it, it was like I felt it.
Yeah. And the about 1,800 is my maintenance calories, and I'm 4 inches taller than you.
Exactly. Yeah.
So I'm like way bigger than you, and that's my maintenance. Yeah. So and as a 5'4" woman, having that amount of calorie increase and how much you can eat is a bonus for a lot of people.
It really is. Most 5'4" women are stuck eating 1,500 calories, which, by the way, you can make it work for you. If you're eating 1,500 calories of mostly whole, nutritious foods, you will be satisfied.
Yes.
Like, at least your body will be satisfied. Your you know, if you have a sweet craving or something, if you have childhood, you know, as a child you eat a lot of sweets, then that's a psychological component. That's different. But from a physical aspect, it's actually enough for most people. But
yes, and that's exactly right, because even at 1800, when I'm just maintaining and I'm not really exercising and I'm just eating at home, it's actually hard to meet that.
Yeah.
If you're mostly just eating vegetables and like the standard portions of grains and everything. And the only way I'm able to maintain my maintenance while I'm not exercising is because I also eat out 1 or 2 times, in which case I overshoot. So it ends up averaging out around what my maintenance needs to be.
You know, that's really interesting, because I test a lot of apps. So I was testing another food tracking app, and I realized that I cycle between days of eating eating way below my maintenance, and then days of eating way above, and it averages out to my like when I did the math. I'm like, hey, this averages out, and I wasn't trying to eat over or under. I was eating naturally, and I wonder. It's interesting that you kind of naturally do that too.
I feel like most people who have gotten into a habit of maintaining essentially end up doing that.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you eat out a lot, like more than 1 or 2 meals a week, I think it's really hard to average out to your maintenance.
Yeah.
But if you're eating 1 to 2 meals out, I feel like that's been the biggest lever that I've seen for myself, for you, for our clients, where it automatically really helps. And of course, if you don't keep a lot of sweets at home.
Yeah.
Or alcohol.
It's amazing. It's amazing how little sweets cravings you have when you're just not around it.
Yes.
So you were the one who told me about this study where researchers surveyed people who claim to have very good willpower, and then those who claim to not have very good willpower, and they tested them on a lot of different dimensions, right?
Yeah.
And the one consistent thing that showed up with all the people, probably the strongest correlation, or maybe the only correlation, I don't really remember, is that the people with good willpower don't face as many temptations.
Yep.
So they don't keep sweets in the house, they don't hang out with toxic people, or whatever happens to be their temptation, right? They don't keep the TV in their bedroom, you know, things like that. And it's the environment. Like, these people aren't actually mentally stronger than anybody else. And I realized, I mean, neither am I, and neither were you. Richa, I thought you were. Actually, I thought you were a mentally strong person with a lot of willpower, and then I started living, you know, becoming your roommate, and then I realized, hey, wait a minute. You just don't keep any treats in the house. All you keep are 85% dark chocolate.
Yes. Which gets bitter after time. Yeah. I want to attach to that is not having a lot of temptations around you, but also thinking that it's your choice. Because I think a lot of people, you know, hear that and they get rid of a lot of sweets at home, but they feel they're doing it because they don't have a choice. Mm-hmm. And as a result, when they are faced with sweets again, they are unable to stop themselves.
I completely agree with that. I've actually been there before, and changing your language around things really makes a huge difference, especially if you are what I would call a rebel type. If you guys have ever heard of Gretchen Rubin's 4 Tendencies, they have different types of how you can be motivated. So the book is called 4 Tendencies. It's pretty good, but you can also just read about it, the 4 Tendencies online. And one type is the rebel type, which basically is what it sounds like. Mm-hmm. You don't want to be told what to do, even if it's by yourself. And so if you feel like you cannot, like the word is, I cannot keep treats in the house, you're telling yourself what to do, and you will internally rebel against that. But instead, if you change the word to, I choose to not keep treats in the house, or better, change it to, I choose to keep healthy things in the house that make me feel good and make my body happy with me. That change of vocabulary, suddenly it's not yourself telling you what to do. It's like, it's a privilege now to keep healthy foods in the house. I do feel like, I don't know if I explained that.
No, I think that was
clearly, because some people hear that and it sounds very soft and fluffy, but it's really it's a mindset. It's a mindset trick. Yeah.
It is. I mean, how you speak to yourself has the biggest influence on anything. Like that is your vocabulary around foods really affects whether you feel it's your choice or it's not your choice. And whenever it's your choice, you're going to be much better at resisting to it. And the same thing goes with your own progress, right? If you keep telling yourself you are broken or you are not making progress fast enough to whom? And are these people that you're comparing yourself to, like, where did they start, right? For example, there's a Bollywood actor, Hrithik Roshan. He recently put on weight. And then I think there was a very short amount of time, I think it was just like 30 days or something like that, and he was like ripped again, right? Now people will look at that and be like, oh, he can do it, so I can do it. But look at his starting point, right? Like even if you look at his fat photos, you can tell that he has a lot of muscle under all of that fat, right? And the second piece is, did he really do it just with fitness, right? He does mention that he did, eat better, and he ate foods that he would not have eaten. Like he tried to make it enjoyable to himself for the first time in his life, while before he was just eating foods that would get him to his goal. But they have videos of him doing exercises, but no videos of him eating, right? So I think there's a lot of confusion about the person that you're comparing to. You're only seeing the tip of the iceberg. Like there's so much going on below the waterline that you're not seeing, and if you only compare yourself to the tip of the iceberg without really knowing for certain that your situation is 100% matched with their situation, you're always going to feel that you're not doing enough because you don't have enough of the story. So yeah, vocabulary, actually having full context, both of these things really, really matter. And speaking of speaking to yourself, I sent it to you, I think yesterday or day before yesterday. This was mind-blowing to me. So apparently some people, like myself, when I have my thought process going on, there's a narrative going on in my head. Like I'm constantly thinking in sentences. So that's how I talk to myself. But it blew my mind that apparently there are people where they don't form sentences when they're talking to themselves. They only see images or abstract concepts. And you said you may be like that?
I am not sure. I know when I read, I talk to myself when I read, but when there's no words, I don't think I gravitate towards words.
Do you see pictures?
Yeah. I feel feelings. Does that make sense? I don't know if I always see pictures either. No, actually I do. I don't know. I'll have to experiment with this week and see who am I, but I know I don't always talk to myself.
I see. Yeah. And I wonder how that influences your ability to work on this mindset stuff, because I feel like there's a big pivot. Like if you're someone who thinks with words, maybe vocabulary helps a lot, but then when you are thinking in pictures, maybe visualization is more of the thing to try out. Like I'm curious, like if this is actually true, that people think in these different ways, like the ways to approach yourself starts with how do you naturally think.
So, sorry.
Yeah.
So, instead of saying, like, choosing to not eat a second donut, right? A verbally oriented person would change their dialogue from, I shouldn't have this donut, to, I choose to not have this donut because I want to feel, have energy for the rest of the day or something. A visually oriented person might just imagine themselves in the state of like a healthy person.
Exactly.
Like
yeah, like the future state. Like imagine, like I have this donut. What does my life look like after the high of the donut has worn off?
Yeah.
All right. Like, well, what am I feeling? What do I see myself? Versus like, I didn't have this donut, or I did the right things before I had the donut.
Right.
Then what does my life look like, and what do I feel like?
Yeah.
I wonder, because we know both tactics work, right?
Yeah.
But they work to different, and we also know it works to different degrees for different people. Mm-hmm. And I wonder how much of that is actually comes down to how do you communicate with yourself, in pictures or in words.
That's really interesting.
Yeah.
I think you're onto something. I never thought about the picture versus words thing before.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It also actually made me think a lot too. This is unrelated to health and fitness, but when we were writing our emails, so Lucy is very good at creating a story around like painting a picture of what's going on. When you're writing a story.
I think when I write in emails, I think in comic strips.
Yes.
So actually, that maybe just answered your question earlier. I do think in comic strips.
Yes. And I don't. I don't see comic strips. What I see is a flow chart where I'm like, this idea leads to this idea, leads to this idea.
Uh-huh.
Right?
Yeah.
Which is not a picture. It's more like logical. It's just like bullet points, right? And about its words, right?
Yeah.
Which I think explains quite a bit on like our differences in like the type of writing that we naturally gravitate towards as well. And yeah.
Yeah. Okay, I'm very curious to hear from you guys. What are you more visually, or do you think in pictures, or do you think in words, or do you think in something else?
Yes.
Maybe there's an auditory type too. I don't know.
Yeah. Or are there situations in which you think in one way versus the other way? I also wonder about that.
I bet mixes happen in different contexts.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, the step-by-step logic way of thinking is definitely me when I'm coding.
Right.
I can't imagine thinking in any other way when I'm coding. So I'm sure there's different contexts that produces different things. Yeah. Really cool.
I'm actually curious about, you said when you were reading the book there were parts that connected a lot of dots for you, but then there were parts that did not. You felt like the research may have been lacking, or you didn't agree with it, and I'm curious about the other part.
So I am a type of person who is, my default is skepticism. I'm agnostic towards things. So they may or may not be true until I've double confirmed everything. So what I'm just saying is that this book is full of research. I don't recommend it for beginners because it's so dry. It is like reading almost like reading a research paper. It's like one step below reading research papers, which I've also done, and it's not fun. But anyway, he just throws so much research at you, and it felt like there were many research that he threw that I pretty sure I read counter research to it. And the thing is, he didn't address those. And usually, if you want to argue for one side and there's clearly an opposition, you want to address the opposition. You want to at least call it out. But when I find that you're ignoring the opposition completely, it just makes me feel like you're cherry picking your research, which everybody does. By the way, everybody does, because everybody has a bias filter, including us.
Yes.
The book itself is mainly about super slow training, which advocates lifting weights really slowly, basically. That's the gist. And he goes into a lot of research about how your muscles adapt to tension and stress and how it grows because of that. And none of it is wrong, but I think it's the interpretation that I'm not sure can be drawn from the data he supplied.
I see.
So when it comes to building muscle, if you guys are interested, there are lots of factors involved. Tension, time under tension is one of them, which is how much time your muscles is spent being under the tension of the weight. There's also things like how many reps that you do, which is a volume, basically how much exercise you do in a given session. Did you just do 5 push-ups, or did you do 25 push-ups over the course of the training session? There's intensity, there's the weight that you're using. Are you using a 5-pound dumbbell or a 15-pound dumbbell? And all of those factors come into play. And the author is basically arguing that while all those factors come into play, the most important part is the time under tension. And I'm just not sure yet. I'm agnostic to that right now.
I see.
Because I have seen other studies that showed that the people who spend less time under tension and were able to get more volume of the exercise into their workout. So they were able to lift more weight or lift more amount of times, and they were actually able to make more progress.
I see.
Now, I just want to point out that at the end of the day, I do think it's good to just kind of go with your own logic, go with your intuition on this, right? Because every single research will have a competing research.
Yeah.
Because not all research is designed, it is perfect.
Yes.
It's perfectly designed. And if you just read the abstract, you're gonna miss a lot of stuff. Like, you gotta actually go in and see how the experiment was designed, and ain't nobody got time for all of that, right? So, so yeah, at the end of the day, here's what I will say. All of these hacks around strength training and building muscle, I think they all work.
Mm-hmm.
It comes down to arguing for which one is the most efficient, which for a lot of people, unless you're an athlete, it doesn't matter.
Right.
What matters is it's something that you enjoy, something that you can stick with, and something that actually helps you make progress. So if super slow strength training helps you build muscle and makes you happy, keep doing it. If high volume strength training, which is what a Bigness project was, you enjoy doing that and you're making progress, then keep doing that. It really, practically speaking, I don't think it actually matters unless you're a competitor. Then maybe it matters at that point.
I'm curious about the time under time. Were you gonna talk about something else, or I have questions on it?
No, keep going.
Okay,
Yeah.
so for the time under tension, my question was like, because how slowly you're doing it,
Mm-hmm.
do you end up time-wise spending the same time under tension versus if you did the volume thing? You know what I mean? In aggregate?
So
is it the time?
If we want to get into this, I feel like we're getting into, I have been thinking about this a lot. And I think I wonder the same thing, because here's what he advocates, which is you only do once, in a traditional strength training program, you do 3 sets of an exercise. Usually you do about 6 to 8 exercises for a total of 18 to 24 exercises. Okay, math check me later. And but in this program, because you're lifting so slowly, you can't do a second set.
Yes.
So you can only do 1 set of each exercise. And I do think in each set of exercise lasts about 90 seconds, I believe, which does sound like about the time it takes to do 3 sets of a typical exercise more quickly.
Yes.
So yeah, I think the math does work out to be very close to each other. Another thing I want to say is that something that I noticed is that when you actually count the number of reps, if you're doing 5 to 10 seconds in super slow training, some people do even slower, but I think typically it's 5 to 10 seconds of down and then 5 to 10 seconds up of some sort of a lift. And when I timed myself doing it, I actually ended up doing about 8 reps, which is the amount of reps typically recommended in a typical strength program. So I'm like, I'm doing about the same amount of reps. I'm about the same time spent under tension and all of these.
Yeah.
So yeah, the math, they actually do seem very similar. Now there are subtle differences, but if you look at the wider picture, they are kind of similar.
Yeah.
Which all comes down to pick what works for you.
Yeah, this sounds very similar to, the diet version where there's like keto, paleo, etc., where they're like, oh, you don't need to count calories, but the way I've designed the system is you end up cutting calories.
Yeah.
So it's like, oh, you don't need to do 3 sets of 8 reps.
Yeah.
You just need to do them longer. But then it's like, finally, the time under tension is exactly the same thing, and that's what matters.
I like that you applied it to the analogy of dieting, because it is very similar in that whether you choose to cut foods from your diet, like with paleo, or whether you choose to just decrease the time you spend eating, like with intermittent fasting, they both work, and they might work better for some people than other people. And it's perfectly okay to choose what works for you.
Yeah.
There's really no right or wrong way to do it, unless you're in that top, 0.1% of people who just wants to super hack their life and live to be a 150 or whatever, like the super athlete type, right? Then maybe it makes some sort of difference, but for 99.999% of
and even if you want to be that person, you need to first exhaust the 99.9% first before you start doing these kinds of optimizations.
I don't know if I said this last week, but keto and all the really cool, trendy discoveries about health, about dieting or weight loss or whatever these days, the people who popularized and discovered keto, all of these things did not come with they didn't discover it for the purpose of weight loss or popularize it for the purpose of weight loss. The people who actually popularized these movements were either people trying to solve a medical issue, or they were biohackers, and they had already reached a point where they were healthy enough.
Yes.
Like they were like, okay, I'm baseline. I'm like good. Now I want to take myself up to like level 10.
Yeah.
And then they're like, okay, let me look at MCT oil and pairing it with intermittent fat and all that stuff. And then at some point, somebody like Joe Rogan, features them on their podcast, and then it spreads to everybody else. And suddenly it becomes a common knowledge type of thing. And now people, lay people try to use this as the first step to getting healthy when it may be a little too extreme.
Yes.
Because it didn't start out that way. It started out by being discovered and used by the people who were already in that extreme lifestyle.
Yeah, exactly. It's like saying when Newton came up with calculus, we should all start doing calculus.
We should all start doing calculus
It's
now.
Like, what? You build up to calculus. Yeah. You don't start with calculus.
There's a subset of people who are like, ready for calculus from day one, right?
Yeah.
But it's still just a very small subset of people.
Exactly. Yeah. And also question, does calculus actually change your life in practice? Your day-to-day life? Maybe it's not necessary even if you're one of those people. So it really just comes down to like what your goals are, right? Like I wanted to talk about thinking in first principles and analogy, but we'll save that for the next one because I think
there's one more thing I wanted to talk about too about training, and that's the importance of recovery.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
we'll talk again.
Let's talk about that next time.
Yeah.
All right. I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. If you have comments, thoughts about anything that we talked about, or even questions, maybe we didn't actually connect all the dots for you.
Yeah.
Or maybe you feel like we talked about two contradictory things. Let us know. We love hearing from you. And by the way, we also have a free intermittent fasting workshop coming up because it's one of the methods that a lot of our clients keep bringing up. So we decided to spread it outside of the information that we're just giving our clients to everyone. Come join us. The details are in the description below. Mm-hmm. All right. Till next time.
Bye.
Hey there. If you want to know when the next episode drops, go ahead and hit that subscribe button and also hit that bell icon. Until then, keep crushing it.